Joined now by the spokesperson for Clover, Steven Velthuysen, to discuss the impasse and how the company sees a way forward. Steven, good afternoon. Welcome to eNCA. I understand there's a meeting that's going to be taking place tomorrow to try and resolve this matter, and it's going to be mediated by Lionel October from the Department of Trade and Industry. Can you confirm that?
Hi Dan, thank you. Thank you for having me. Yes, I can confirm we will continue our discussions tomorrow, facilitated by Mr. October, who was appointed by the Minister to assist in facilitating this process. We did have a meeting last week Sunday, where we kicked off our discussions, and every party was given an opportunity to put their position on the table.
Okay. Now, before we expand more about what's on the table, Steven, I saw a clip later, one of our colleagues there, I think it was Mangoba Mkhuna, our reporter, was covering the solidarity pickets that are taking place today. One of the trade unions saying they were not really happy as a trade union about what happened last Sunday. They still want more. So what's on the table from Clover's perspective?
We went, I just need to put the discussions or all the meetings that happened thus far in context. When this process started last year in August, which was facilitated by the CCMA, we had no more than 7 meetings between us and the unions, clearly setting out the company's financial position and the need for restructuring. During these discussions, we set out clearly the austerity measures that is required in order to avoid further job losses. And we've also discussed with them in detail what other measures we considered necessary in order to avoid these job losses. But unfortunately, all those meetings led to a deadlock and was summarily rejected. When we were approached by the government to facilitate the meeting, we had to again put on the table exactly what was offered to the union members, what we believed was a reasonable alternative to avoid further retrenchments. We saw a lot of untruths and misinformation being communicated in the media, which was totally incorrect, and we had to make sure that government clearly understands that at no stage did we act mala fide when we discussed all the options on the table with the unions. So we set out the position clearly, what we had to offer to the unions, and there was a debate between the parties in terms of what their understandings were or not, and there was obviously government also had a few questions and so on.
Okay, thanks for the context, and we'll get into some of the details now. And Mangoba Mkhuna was on the ground outside one of the protests earlier today, my colleague, and one of the things that he was told, from what I could hear, the whole issue is around a bigger picture thing of job losses. There's, I think, more than 1,000 workers, according to the trade unions, who've lost their jobs, and there's several hundred more who might be retrenched. So there's a concern there, no more job losses. Number 2, there's an issue of salary reductions, okay? They are not happy with the salary reduction, and that's taking place under the umbrella 1 of austerity measures. The unions are saying Clover is undertaking austerity measures because, of course, there's this deal with Milco of Israel that's pending. So what are the issues here? I mean, why do you still want to retrench more employees, and why are you reducing their salaries? Is what Milco wants?
Then, to put in context, as you know, many companies have been severely affected by the COVID pandemic, and we were not spared. Also with this unknown phenomenon that hit us, and we took the decision to undergo restructuring as a very last resort. And when we had the meetings with the union members, we played open cards with them by setting out to them clearly what our financial position is and why there's a need for restructuring of the business. Now, when we approached them, there were, to be clear, there was of the parties that lost jobs. There was about 120, give or take, that positions that were redundant and no longer required, that were retrenched. The 790 people that were retrenched involuntarily was offered an alternative. We approached the union to say we need to cut more jobs to create a sustainable business, and they were offered an alternative in order to avoid retrenchments, which was rejected outright. And unfortunately, we had no alternative but to proceed with the process.
Okay.
Now, unfortunately, it seems like the whole strike is now being politicized.
Sorry, I'm just aware of time, and I want to give you fair opportunity. So, are there more retrenchments being played? From what the trade unions are telling us, there's several hundred more that are being planned.
I'm not too sure what the retrenchments they are referring to, but our retrenchment process was finalized the whole process was finalized in October. We had several discussions thereafter, and then it was implemented. So there are no other retrenchments in terms of the current 189 process being contemplated.
Okay. On the table tomorrow, what is going to be there? Salaries has become an issue, and there are concerns around the whole issue of the merger or the takeover or the business transaction. I don't know what you guys refer to it as Clover, with Israel's Milco. What's going to be on the table? What will Clover go into tomorrow's talks and put on the table?
Then, unfortunately, as I tried to mention before, the whole strike has now been politicized by taking aim at the shareholders. The whole restructuring process was done because of operational reasons and had nothing to do with the shareholders. In fact, the shareholders supported us during very difficult trading environment with the COVID pandemic, and even assisted financially to ensure that we avoid further retrenchments of the company. So we're not prepared to talk about the issue of shareholders, because this has got nothing to do with the labor dispute at hand. And the disputes that started the whole strike action is based on the wage increase and the retrenchments. Those are the issues that we are willing to engage with the unions on at the table tomorrow, and all other issues raised in terms of shareholders and takeovers is something that we're not prepared to discuss, and which we feel that they are taking liberty of and making it a political issue instead of making it a labor issue.
Even if it's coloring and flavoring the current texture and nature of the strike. I mean, it's like 10 weeks of industrial action now. Aren't you concerned as Clover that somehow you need to address that shareholder issue in a way that will put it to rest?
Look, Dan, again, it's in our mind, straightforward labor issue. It is not something that we feel has got anything to do with the current dispute at hand in terms of the retrenchments and the wage increases. And we're not prepared to get into a debate about shareholders and and whatever else other misinformation they've been communicating in the media.
Okay, finally, Stephen, and very briefly, tomorrow's table, the shareholder matter, you're not prepared to discuss, you've clarified that, but on the retrenchments are done and dusted. You finished that process in October. There'll be no more job losses from what you've said. And what about the salary issue?
We've been very clear about our options that we've put on the table, and what we've presented as a reasonable alternative. We hope that we can debate and clear up these issues tomorrow, and that there will be common ground at the end of the meeting, and that we can continue with business as usual.
Yeah, the trade unions are saying that they're not going to back down. They're going to continue their protest action. Well, let's see what you can achieve with the help of Mr. Lionel October, mediating there, of course, on behalf of the Department of Trade and Industry. Thanks for your time for now. That's the spokesperson for Clover, Steven Velthuysen, commenting on the current mass action and, of course, how the company was going to be approaching the talks tomorrow. And we know that the workers, they remain angry. They say they won't end their protest action until all their demands have been met. My colleague, reporter Mangoba Mkunu, has been covering this story for us. He's joining us now in the studio, and he came in just as I had begun the interview with the Clover spokesperson there, Steven Velthuysen. Mangoba, you had a little bit of that. Just your reaction. I mean, you were on the ground, you spoke to the trade unions, you heard what Clover's got to take to the table tomorrow.
Well, certainly, Brian, what we're getting from the unions, of course, is that they won't be budging on any of their demands. So if Clover says that they won't be negotiating when it comes to the issue of retrenchments, I guess, Brian, it's still going to be a long haul in that particular meeting. That is going to take place tomorrow, because the unions are quite clear, Brian, that they're not going to accept any of those issues not to be addressed. And top of the priority, of course, is the issue of those workers who were laid off. We do know that there are over 1,600 that have been retrenched since last year. In fact, we know 800 of them were offered packages and other 800 were actually retrenched from the company. And the company is saying that they actually want those retrenchments, or the unions rather pretend, saying that they want to see those retrenchments being reversed unconditionally. And if the employer is not going to be budging on that particular issue, therefore they are saying that they're not going to be finding each other when it comes to that meeting. But also the issue of the pay cuts, the austerity measures that have been implemented by Clover, they're saying that they want those austerity measures not to be implemented, especially when it comes to the issue of the closing of factories. We do know that there's a plan to close about 4 of those factories in various provinces, and so they are saying that they want a stop to this. And this is a message that they really took to the Israeli trade offices in Sandton, to say they want them to actually disinvest the company Milco that we spoke about, the Israeli company, to disinvest from Clover in order to stop these job losses at the dairy producer. But take a listen to what one of the union leaders had to say.
Okay, so we'll just try and get a sense of the sentiment, Mangoba. That bite is not ready yet. From what you are saying, the workers were on strike since November, are saying they're not budging. Clover, as we heard just a short while ago, they're not prepared to discuss all the issues, particularly the shareholder matter that touches on Israel's Milco company. And today was a day of solidarity. I mean, there were other trade unions that have come out now in support. It looks like the labor issues are now mixed, very much so, and very strongly so, with shareholder matters.
Indeed, Pradeep. In fact, we did see SAFTU affiliated unions joining that particular mass solidarity action that took place today. It was an international day of action, according to the 2 unions that are leading this particular strike, which is the FAU as well as Jiwusa, who are saying that essentially they are not going to accept anything other than those demands that they've put on the table. And they're quite clear, Pradeep, that tomorrow they're not quite really expecting to see that matter being resolved, because they really won't be budging on those issues. They want those workers to come back to work, but they also want those that are still facing possible retrenchments. They are saying that, Britain, it's about 800 of them that are facing possible retrenchments by the end of February. And this is just from the closure of one of those factories, which is here in City Deep in Johannesburg. And they are saying that if that particular factory is closed, those 800 workers stand to lose their jobs. So they are saying that they are not going to be negotiating when it comes to those issues. And in fact, they are even willing, Britain, to continue with their action. They're saying there's pretty much more planned in the coming weeks in terms of how this protest would develop. But they're quite stern that they're not going to leave this particular or let go of this protest or this strike up until all of their demands have been met by the employer.
Thank you very much for that update there, Mangoba Mkunu. That's the latest he's bringing us on that mass strike by Clover employees who are fighting against mass job and wage cuts. And also, they're not happy with the merger with Israeli company Milco. But Clover telling us just a short while ago that the shareholder matter is not on the table for discussion. There's only 2 labor issues: retrenchments or job losses and the issue of wages. We'll have to wait and see if or whether or not Mr. Lionel October tomorrow will be successful in trying to find an amicable solution and an end to this 10-week-old strike at Clover.